Hey everybody, this is Dream, and today we have a four-game NBA slate for you. Before I get started, can you guys smash that like and subscribe button? It really helps the channel a lot. I really do appreciate all the people in Discord and in the YouTube members. Make sure to check that out for daily uh, write-ups for NBA and sometimes other sports. I'm not sure how much I'll get to other sports today, as I am a little bit under the weather. I'm not sure if I've got COVID or not, so I'm going to get checked out. But let's go and get into this particular slate here. Uh, for the injury report today, the 76ers have bailed him out. They do have some new players coming in, so we'll have to see how that's going to play into how they do their roster and their, how they play today. But the Pistons have Duren and Burks both questionable. For the Pelicans, Ingram is questionable and Nance is questionable. And for the Suns, Beal is out and Booker is questionable. So obviously, some of these injuries, situations that are questionable, are definitely going to showcase some opportunity if guys get ruled out. But for now, we're going to operate as if most of these guys look like they're going to play today. So let's go ahead and get into it. First, for point guards, we're going to start with CJ McCollum here for the Pelicans. Now, he's in an interesting spot. I do think he'd be a better option if Ingram is in fact ruled out. And he's really the guy that I feel like has the most likelihood of being ruled out of the questionable options. He had a really big game yesterday against Oklahoma City with Ingram out, and he's just too cheap right now still. He's been pretty solid to start the season. He's got a pretty high floor. He's filling up the bucket, get a lot of opportunities. He's also playing well, getting some steals and blocks and stuff. So I really like how he's playing. I don't expect another 11 rebound game, but I do expect him to get a few assists and a few rebounds that really will boost his fantasy potential here, and hopefully he can get around 20 actual points as well. So he's definitely in play on the slate. Then we're going to look at Schroeder for excuse me, for Toronto. He's really played well with his new team so far this season. He has a little bit of an inconsistency, but he's still priced pretty fair right now, and so he has some utility, though his price is a little bit up higher than it has been, and this is a back-to-back, but there's just so few teams and options available today that he draws a decent play, and he did well against Philly in his last game against them this season, where he scored 42 fantasy points a few games ago, so he's definitely in play today. Then we'll look at Fultz for Orlando. Now he is facing Utah, which can be a tough matchup, but he's had a pretty tough week of matchups, and he's done okay. He has been a little bit up and down with his minutes, and I do feel like his price is a little bit high. But he is capable of a big game here, and so that gives him some utility on the slate, though he tends to be more of a GPP play than anything. And then we're going to look at Horton Tucker. Now, he's oddly only available at point guard on DraftKings today. He has some potential, though. He's been a little bit up and down throughout the season, but he definitely has a high floor and a low. He has a low floor and a high ceiling, so he's squarely a GPP play, but he has some potential in this matchup, and so that does give him some utility. The assists that he's had this season so far have been really solid, so I do like his upside here. Moving as well, you could also consider Tyrese Maxey and Scotty Barnes at this position. Moving to shooting guard, Jordan Clarkson is a core play for me right now. Now, do keep in mind that he does have a low floor, so he's more of a GPP play today than a cash game play. But he is in play mostly also because he has a high ceiling and shooting guard is relatively weak today, and that gives him a lot of upside in this matchup. Plus, he's got a pretty good potential matchup, so I do like him a lot today on the slate regardless. Then we'll look, obviously, Dennis Schroeder can play at this position as well, who we already mentioned at point guard. You could also consider Jalen Suggs, DeAnthony Melton, and Cade Cunningham as well. Moving to small forwards, we're going to start with, excuse me, Lauri Markkanen um, for Utah. Now, he's been pretty good so far this season, though he does have a lower floor than his price. He did pop down in price for a few days, but he popped right back up today. And so he's not a must play, but he definitely has some utility on the slate, though he does carry some risk as his price has gone pretty high as a result of his play. Looking at Franz Wagner, also a good option today. His floor has been better than expected so far this season, and his price has stayed about the same. So I do think he's got some upside. He also has over 40 fantasy point potential, so he definitely draws a good matchup here and some good utility on this particular slate. Then we'll look at Keldon Johnson, and these two teams did face each other a couple days ago. He had a really solid game there. Now, he's had a low floor this season, though his worst game was against the Clippers when they got blown out. I expect this game to be somewhat closer, though if Booker plays, that could inhibit him a little bit. His floor is good enough that he has a lot of potential, especially at this price range. I thought his price was going to be higher today, but I do like him a lot from that perspective, and he has some nice potential in this matchup. Then we'll look at Kelly Oubre Jr. for Philly. Now he should move into the starting lineup, and his minutes should slightly increase. His price is still pretty low. Do keep in mind though that he's a very streaky player, and so while he does have upside, he can definitely bottom out and have a terrible game, which he does, a third of the time about last season. So as a starter, so I do think he has some utility here, but he is high risk, high reward. You can also consider Scotty Barnes, Tobias Harris, and Azar Thompson at this position. Maybe in the power forward, then we're going to look at John Collins. Now, he can play center as well. Uh, he's my favorite play on the slate thus far, at least until we get more news on injuries. He has some really good upside. He's played really well to start the season. In fact, none of the games that he's played this far, 5 games in, has he been less than what he needs to 5x at today's price point. I'm honestly surprised his price hasn't come up more since he's been over 30 fantasy points a couple of times, but he definitely draws some good potential in this matchup, and so he has nice utility here. Lauri Markkanen and Oubre Jr. can also play at this position, but I'm also going to look at Azar Thompson for Detroit. Now, he's been pretty solid so far. One of the few rookies that have really played well so far this season. His price is a little higher today, which does make him harder to roster. So he's definitely not a must play, but he's definitely in play on the slate, especially in a short slate where he's one of the few guys that's been pretty consistent to start the season. I also consider Kevin Durant at this position. Looking at our centers, obviously Collins can also play at this position, which might be beneficial today. But if you want to go with a traditional center, Joel Embiid is obviously in play. With Harden gone, his usage is going to be high, which it has been to start the season. I don't expect him to have another 80 fantasy point game today, but getting over 60 should be a paramount option for him today, especially against Toronto, who he dominated for 34 points and almost got a triple double and had 63 fantasy points a few games ago. Granted, his price has risen. I mean, you're just paying, you're paying for that triple double potential here, and he definitely has that on the slate, and he really does have a lot of potential with Harden being gone now, and he's going to have a lot of usage on this particular game. Then another option would be Nurkic for the Suns. If Booker gets rolled out, that definitely gives him some more utility as his usage will go up quite a bit. But if Booker is rolled in, he would be somebody I would probably avoid. That said, he's been a little bit up and down so far this season, but his usage is kind of determined based on other of the superstars, how many of them are playing right now. He does get more usage as a result, and he has good rebounding upside as well, especially in this matchup against the Spurs, so he definitely draws some nice utility here. With that said, guys, thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below, and have a nice day, guys.